Hey there everybody, I'm Spencer Kelly, 16-year-old entrepreneur and lead expeditioneer of the Expedition Soap Company. It's April, and that means it's Autism Awareness Month. As you may or may not know, I have Asperger Syndrome, which is an autistic spectrum disorder. As you can imagine, I've had many challenges throughout my life that I had to overcome just to enjoy it every single day like you do. For a big part of my life, especially when I was younger, this was almost insurmountable. As a child, I was unable to speak like many other kids. I had so many thoughts in my head, which I could, if I made a compendium of my thoughts, I could make it this high. But I couldn't represent it in writing or with words. I spoke in gibberish, and it was probably the most frustrating time of my life, since not even my parents could understand what I was saying. It was awful, to say the least. I was, however, able to read far beyond what many doctors thought possible for me. And this was the very small spark that led to the big flame that is standing in front of you today. Before turning 2, I knew all the colors, every number, all simple shapes, every animal name, and their baby names. As you might be surprised to know, they're 2 different things. I could count to 20 in English and to 10 in Spanish. I was able to read all the words that I was being taught, point to them in a book, and know exactly what they meant. However, I was unable to comprehend what most children could do so easily, which was just simply what the words really meant. I was between 2 to 3, sure I could memorize whole books, whole scenes from TV shows and movies, and how to work a computer. But I was sort of like an echo chamber. I could yell hello into it, and sure, maybe the cave could yell hello back, but the cave didn't know what hello meant. It made no sense to anyone I talked to, as it wasn't very conversational. For example, if you were to say hello there to me, I would start going, "Put your hands up, you filthy animal." Props if you remember where that's from. I still wasn't able to speak with original thoughts, but I had about 17 different books at the time, with about 35 pages each, that I could remember and recite word for word. This reading ability is known as hyperlexia, which is a symptom found in many, I don't want to say intelligent, but pretty smart kids. And it just happens to be quite common in autism, so many times it's considered a splinter skill. Perhaps not a central trait of autism, but something that appears nonetheless. Shortly after this, I was spelling many of the words. However, my parents couldn't read a single thing I was spelling, because I had terrible handwriting at the time, that fortunately, you're going to hear will get way better. And then I moved on from simply being able to spell words, albeit terribly, into being able to have a routine that I created for myself. The way I ate, the way I walked outside, the way I played, the way I went to bed, all of it was a routine which I had created for myself. Unfortunately, it was a very repetitive pattern, you see, to the point where I would actually get upset should something have changed. My reading skills kept emerging, and by the time I was about 3 to 4, I was reading whole books on research done with whales, sharks, dolphins, dinosaurs, frog life cycle, reptilians, amphibians, birds of prey, and my favorite of all, penguins. My speech was still developing unusually. It was mostly comprised of stuff I've heard on TV or read in a book. This is called echolalia. When anyone asked me a question, I would answer, but it would always be completely off topic. For example, again, the whole hello there, I would tell you about penguins. Or perhaps if you said, "How is your day going?" I would tell you about the book on dinosaurs I was just reading. I had almost no capabilities for typical speech, and reciprocal speech was almost impossible. In fact, I couldn't even do basic small talk. Around age 3 or so, I began getting therapy for these unusual speech disorders. Something I didn't mention yet is that I also had very severe motor tics, or muscle contractions, since the time I was born. I would have these in what seemed like short bursts that would happen for a grand total of about 100 a day. Even when I lay down to sleep, my body would tic. In fact, my mother would often come into my room at 3 or 4 in the morning, you know, because she gotta check on me at that time. And I would just be going, Sound effects aren't necessary, but they do help. I also would do things like pace back and forth while reciting a movie or book out loud. I would sometimes body rock and punch up into the air uncontrollably. This was just sort of a manifestation of my nervous tics. In fact, at one point they were so bad that this thumb right here was completely calloused over because I would continually rub my face. In fact, I still have the grooves in my bone that I'm stuck with for the rest of my life. But hey, maybe one day they'll make a saw out of my jawbone. When I was 4 years old, my mom took me to see a chiropractor that changed my life. There's no other way to put it. I got up from her table and I was able to talk conversationally for the first time in my whole life. I was able to express my thoughts and feelings. It was the most amazing moment I had ever experienced, like the first time you have chocolate. You know, it's just bliss. And my mother and father say that I talk non-stop from then on. Although, I would say that they're gab-outs themselves, so hey, like father, like son. I then went through a phase of very severe stuttering that lasted about a year long. We kept on with the chiropractor and she completely ironed out the problem. Well, it was a bit me, a bit her. You see, by that time I began realizing that the words I read could be used in different contexts. So instead of having to directly say a phrase like, the dog jumps over the fence, I could say, hey, the dog over there. I sort of pieced together the language for me. It's actually how I learned a lot of what I speak now, and how to have conversation. I continued to get lots and lots of therapy. It went from speech therapy to social skill therapy, occupational therapy, chiropractic, doctor visits, neurologists, autism doctors. I would almost daily for years. Once I was in school, I also received support in school. And boy, I just want to give a shout out to those people. I love you guys. You made me who I am now, and I can never repay you enough. The year went by in elementary school, but days were more difficult than easy. Being able to talk with other kids was very difficult. Playing with kids was not easy. I could do it, but it sure wasn't easy. Participating in groups, man, that was the worst. I mean, especially when a group project came around. I mean, sure, I was the guy that did 99% of the work, but it didn't make working in groups any easier. I had many supports in place to help me through my school day. And don't worry guys, I wasn't bullied during that time in my life. The kids were as sweet as young kids could be. I mean, what do you expect? Them to give you a trophy every time you walk with them? I mean, sure, I had plenty of times where I was called names, but hey, that's part of life. However, after 5th grade, I began homeschooling. This was great for me because a big problem during school was I'd be reading well into my classes. However, here, I could read all day long and get my work done because I could sort of work out a schedule with my mother that would fit me the best. It really helped me get to where I am today, especially my social skills, which you would think wouldn't develop right because I was homeschooled. However, thanks to this, I had to make my own friends instead of just having school friends. And because of this, it really helped me develop my social skills. Sort of like a bit of a school of hard knocks, you know? Gotta teach everything myself. Each year I progressively improved with the help of my family, and after 5th grade I stopped getting therapy. I just simply started seeing improvement. I was able to have conversations that extended well beyond maybe 30 minutes, an hour. I was able to have, it was amazing. So, and at that point it was easy to do, so I didn't need therapy anymore. And at the beginning of 9th grade, I began taking whole food supplements, and these were a huge turning point for the improvement of my life. I was able to sleep normally without taking for, man, was it 3 hours? God, that was crazy, but 3 hours.
Every day.
Every single day before falling asleep. I was able to respond when someone called my name. Now, that may not sound big, but trust me. When you're my mother and you want your son to come to you, it gets pretty annoying when he doesn't know that you're calling him. I was able to interact more typically with people in conversation. I could actually have meaningful conversations. It was a lot of fun for me because I got to hear what other people thought about, let's just go with something safe, let's say penguins. I got to hear what they thought about penguins instead of just telling them what I thought about penguins. I was able to play more typically with my brother, which was actually a very big emotional point for me. Was my brother. During my childhood, I had zero social skills, so I couldn't really pick up the cues that my brother was giving me, that he wanted to, as he puts it, play with me. I read a lot as a child, and it touches home for me because every second that I was spent reading, I could have spent playing with my brother. And the way I see it, I traded the ability to play with my brother and give him all that wonderful, fun times for where I am now. He's cool with it. He knows what happened, and he loves me. But hey, we all wish that we could, hindsight's 20/20, we all wish that we could go back in time and do what we wish. In fact, my improvement had gone so much that I was able to participate in and lead my team to a conference-wide first place in Quiz Bowl. This game was, well, it was amazing for me because this game was sort of like a bit of a Jeopardy, except you played on a team. And you had to think of the answer, push the button, and say the answer out loud in the span of 3 seconds. On average, 2.5. You gotta get things down when you're doing something like that. The skill involved with this were all skills I struggled with during my entire life, so for me this was a huge personal victory. Life has been continuing to improve for me, and my Asperger's, as I continue to take my whole food supplements. I mean, look at me now. I can have perfectly normal conversational language. I have no problem at all with social skills. As you can see here, my tics are completely under control, and even if I do have a tic, which is actually becoming a bit rare nowadays, it's only this, instead of this, or many other forms it took. Being a spokesperson for autism is very important to me because many people with autism can't really communicate. In the spectrum as a whole, I'm considered rather high functioning, as in the autism that is present doesn't impede my life to the degree that it can impact a life. There are many people and many kids who are more severely impacted in ways that I'm not. Some of these kids are nonverbal their whole life. Some of these kids struggle to even function throughout the day. Some of these kids cannot quickly and easily tell you their thoughts. But believe me, they're having thoughts. Autism is majorly known to be a communication impairment, and people with autism need perhaps a bit more patience than you would give a normal person when you speak to them. Everyone's a little different, and differently affected. The way I like to see it is that perhaps everyone could have, let's say everyone has a mole on their arm, right? We don't remember the person for having a mole on their arm. We remember the guy who had a mole on his arm who painted the Mona Lisa. We remember the guy who was an amazing singer instead of for why he had a mole on his arm. So, instead of looking at a person as being autistic, look at them for what they've done. It works out way smoother in the long run. Trust me. And especially, I wanted to bring awareness about autism. I mean, I know it's Autism Awareness and all, but because I had a very special experience last year in August. I met a person who has a very extraordinary story of how autism affects his life. His name's Matteo Museo. He is completely nonverbal. He has no way of truly speaking. Even coming on 12 now.
No, he's 13.
13?
Mm-hmm. Tell him where you were when this happened.
I don't know, 12, 13, 14, all the kids look exactly the same at that age too, because they're all growing, they all have that bit of a skinniness from puberty causing them to shoot up like weeds. You know, basic stuff.
I think he's 13, but up until 12 he couldn't communicate.
Oh yeah. Yeah, up until 12 he couldn't speak, and when he discovered the ability to essentially use sort of a board that he would have letters written on the board, and he would just be able to tap them. So
the alphabet.
Yeah, an alphabet. It's a bit like a telegraph in a way, where he would just tap, you know, like N-Y-E-R. It's not a real word, I'm just giving an example of what he could do. Mm-hmm. You can look him up on the internet. He wrote an amazing book all by himself, with the help, just by pointing at the board.
Matteo, what were you doing?
Well, it was actually at it was called the World Conference for Autism. It was this place where some of the greatest minds in the field of autism would come together and speak. Yeah, it was essentially where people like Temple Grandin would come and speak about their experiences with autism, how they view that autism developments could change, such as newfound medications or newfound therapy practices. And there I was actually able to meet Matteo and learn his story. And that was such a touching moment for me. It really was something different. Now, I'm Spencer Kelly, the owner of the Expedition Soap Company, and I thank you for listening to my story about how autism affects my life. Now, before you go, I want to tell you something that's very neat that I'm doing right now. Giving back to the organizations that help out with people with autism is very important to me. In fact, I would like to introduce, these 3 blue bars, labeled specifically for autism awareness. Any of these soap bars that we sell, 40% of the proceeds will go back to support autism to my 2 chosen charities, the U.S. Asperger and Autism Alliance Association, yes, and OU Cares. Thank you. So make sure you click on the link below or above. Facebook works in a multitude of different ways. And click on the link to shop for these bars right here.
Show them each bar, Spence.
Alright, so this is our manly scent, the Cool Arctic Frost, perfect nice and blue.
Bring it closer so we can see it.
Yeah, so as you can see here,
below.
It has a couple of factoids about autism on it, as well as the name. Right on the bottom is the name of the bar scent.
Yeah, it's hard to see. Okay.
And on the back is our normal list of our guarantees.
Okay. We'll include photos of these down below. Show the other bars real quick.
Yep, this one is our blueberry. It's a nice one for the kids. And then this one's our blue Hawaiian, which is a perfectly cool floral scent for all the ladies in your life.
Yep.
So once again, I'm Spencer Kelly, and I thank you so much for listening to my story.